The purpose of this video is mainly to clear up some misconceptions and beginner mistakes, and even a mistake made by many spiritual teachers and even some masters probably is it's a mistake with non-duality and truly understanding the essence of non-duality. Um, Many non-dual teachers and teachings will talk about things such as the ego as being an illusion. Um, and there's a level that this is true, but beyond that, like, you have to understand that at the beginning of the path, yes, the ego is, and really at many stages in the path, like, the ego is what's keeping you from your highest awakening possible. But once you start to have more awakenings and really grasp this stuff, you realize that literally everything is the truth. The, and and the truth is all that there is, or probably the best statement you could make in English about non-duality would simply be existence is, or truth is, or God is. But you need to understand that um, existence, truth, or God, or consciousness, or any word you can put in that place as the subject of that sentence, you need to understand that in a total form. The statement God is, like, for that to be true and actually to encompass uh, everything when it comes to non-duality, you have to first understand that God is literally everything. Or that truth is literally everything. It's a little bit easier with existence, somewhat harder with consciousness, if we're examining the individual words, but basically all that see, even what you might typically consider to be a false idea, or like the example of the ego is like something keeping you away from truth, like what that is actually just truth keeping truth away from truth. The whole everything, every step of it, every mistake or every good thing you do on the path, like, it's all truth. It's all the same thing. And I think a lot of even many spiritual teachers, I can tell, they don't really grasp this. They might, like, on a philosophical level and thinking about non-duality, they might kind of get this, but they don't get it at the deepest level where you really have the, you know shocking and first, like, glimpses into this, what it means kind of to experience that. It's different, rather than just thinking about it. And of course, that's what spiritual practice, at least in the way many of these non-dual teachers teach it, or traditions teach it, or even traditions that are not non-dual. What a lot of times these practices are meant to do is to give you that experience of non-duality, which is incredibly important. Without actually many experiences of different facets of the awakening to not the non-dual truth experience, like it's not like you just have one and you're done. It's not like there's just one awakening or one thing that is permanent enlightenment that teaches you everything. You can have what you know there are teachers out there who most people would consider fully enlightened, whatever exactly that means to you. I'm sure it's different for every person, but the thing is, these people who are regarded as fully enlightened are just typically, as far as I can tell, are just you know they might be like fully enlightened in like one tiny aspect of what enlightenment truly can be. Um, but anyway, yeah, the main reason for shooting this video could kind of be captured in saying, um, the ego is also truth. And this goes against like what many spiritual teachers and traditions will say, because they recognize the ego is what's in the way of people having that non-dual experience. But the people who have had enough of these non-dual experiences, once you've had enough, you eventually realize that you've been living in truth the whole time. One thing I started to touch on earlier that I didn't really get to finish was, how something that you would consider to be false from, like, let's say your ego's perspective, or your human identity's perspective, or just the perspective of humanity. Like saying, like if I made the statement, the earth is flat, many people would say, that's a, unquestionably false statement. And you have to understand, when we're talking about what is relatively true, versus what is absolutely true, on terms of relative truth, yeah, that's a false statement, that the earth is flat. But um, at at the most absolute level, truth is merely what is. And when you say or have a thought that, on like a factual level is false, you have to realize that is truth, because it is. The idea of something that being true that ends up not being true, every step in that process is absolute truth. And like, for the example of like a flat earth versus a round earth, in a relative sense, the round earth assertion is more true, because it aligns with like what we can see. But you have to realize that as soon as something that we would consider to be a false belief is held or ever thought of, it exists. And in that existence, it is absolute truth, merely because it exists. Um, and there's nothing that can ever escape this. Um, Even like something that can never be experienced, such as non-existence. Um, that's absolute truth on the level that that idea that imagination has been created. Um, so there are varying levels of truth, and you might say, the relative truth that a flat Earth exists is below a round Earth existing, but what's actually more true than both of those, if we're examining the levels of truth, would be that there's no such thing as an Earth, and there never has been. Um, no matter what angle you're looking at it from, whether you're looking from space, whether you're looking from the surface of Earth, or whether um, you're in a place completely, distant from Earth and you've never heard about Earth. Um, the truth is that the Earth is just a fabrication. As much as your ego is a fabrication. Cause what is you could say it's what is on a deeper level than what is merely in the realm of thoughts, and beliefs, and ways of deconstructing reality and explaining reality. That's in a sense a lot lower than what is actually experienced. So when you walk outside your house and you see grass, underneath your feet, is that the earth? Is that, most people would think, there we go, right there. I know the earth exists, but you have to remember that the earth is something that you, in conjunction with the rest of humanity, have created as a concept to explain the the sensations, or the perception of, for example, if we're talking about grass, these what we would typically call green uh, little, you know, lines coming up from what we would typically call a ground. It's completely divorced from what is actually experienced. So on that level, you could say that direct experience is closer to, or a higher form of truth than either a like the what we would typically call the false idea of a flat earth, or the true idea of a round earth. um Truth beyond both of those is that earth is a complete um imaginary framework of understanding this either ball, spherical object that we say that we're on. um it's 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 not what earth is. It's kind of hard to really give you a full taste of this, like, without you know you having some non-dual experiences and stuff like that. But um anyway, so like that level of truth shows you that all of these ideas and these mental constructions of reality are not what is experienced. So they, that what is experienced is in a sense above that. But then once you awaken on an even deeper level, you realize that that entire hierarchy of truth that you've just created, while it is accurate and true to a pretty high level, compared to what most humans think, that itself was actually all just imagination and framework and everything that made, the final example of Earth is in like the sensation of like you walking out and seeing grass and thinking of that as Earth. Like it's on that same level that you realize that any way that you slice and dice this question of like, if we're looking specifically at the example of an Earth existing, um, it's that same level of mental fabrication as the ego. Really, and well, mainly my point with this that I'm trying to bring up is that um, distinguishing things on these varying levels of truth, that is a complete mental fabrication itself. So at a level even deeper than that, goes to where what is, or what is true, or what exists is precisely what you're experiencing right now. And that could mean that you're in a place where there's absolutely no real way, or you could be in an experience where there's absolutely no way to ever attach that experience to the idea of planet Earth, or the idea that you're a human, or anything like that. And that can be what is in that moment. And on that level, that is actually more true um, than the experience of, or than, well, your imagination. Like, let's say you have a memory that you walked out of your house and looked at the grass, like we were saying. Let's say you remember that you did that yesterday, but now you're in an experience where there's no there's no sense of gravity. There are no colors. There are no sounds. There are none of the things that we would normally use to even have an experience of a planet Earth, or basically, if you think of it that way, what is experienced in that moment is at a level of truth that is deeper than that reality that you remember. But here we need to make a clear explanation of the difference and non-difference between imagination and reality, or what is. You see, what is as far as you're familiar with it is constantly changing. You might not think that what is, or such as like existence, or the world, or the planet, isn't constantly changing, but when we really start to deconstruct this and look at the metaphysics and the epistemology of it, you know, what is actually happening, what knowledge can you actually gain that is well grounded. The experience you're having right now is everything. Um, it's what can be verified at the deepest level. The deepest level of verification depends on present experience. And where this comes in to show that a false belief is a part of absolute truth is that absolute truth is what is. And you, when you have, even if I have the belief come into my mind, and even if it's 100% firmly held that I have the belief that I'm an elephant, even if that completely goes against what my senses are telling me, or what my previous understanding of like what human and elephant would be, like that is something that is coming into existence. And when that, what we would typically think of as a false belief, comes into existence, it is. And when something is, it is absolute truth. That doesn't mean it tells you necessarily about, accurately about other aspects of reality, or gives you other correct knowledge. What it means, what absolute truth means, is that it merely is. It merely is. And what isn't, is what is false. That's what's absolutely false. But even when you think of what isn't, you're imagining what isn't. And in that moment, what isn't is, in a sense, absolutely true, because it is being imagined by you as something that cannot be true or cannot exist. But it exists on the level of mental imagination. Physical reality is just, you know, it's no more true or false than what is experienced in the mental realm, or even just the realm of thoughts in a word-based format. Like they're both of them are just as much imagination. All of reality is God imagining itself. God imagining this room that I'm sitting in, this phone that I'm holding, the viewers who are gonna watch it or not watch it. The distinction between like sensations being more real than thoughts, or some non-dual state of consciousness during meditation, where there are no thoughts and there's no ego, as far as what we would typically call ego. That isn't more true than anything else. It's merely just another experience that can be had. But yeah, so just sit right now while you're looking to me talk on this video, if you're still here, and just for a second try to drop every um, everything that you have that's giving a context to this experience. Um, the thought that I'm a human being, the thought that you're a human being, the thought that you're seeing this on the internet, the thought that there's a planet Earth, the thought that there's such a thing as the universe, the thought that there's such a thing as truth or enlightenment or awakening or non-duality. Um, to have a non-dual experience, one of the easiest ways is to drop all of those things and to merely experience without that level of mental framework, trying to demystify the experience and explain the experience and try to predict what will be experienced next. I mean, all of that, it's keeping you out of those states of awareness. But the point of me making this video was to say that it's important to do practices like that to get on the path of realizing what non-duality is. But once you get far enough, you need to realize that non-duality means that there are no distinctions that are credible. And that's where you realize that everything is truth. Literally everything is truth with a capital T, or all caps truth, if we want to go even more extreme. Yeah, so that's just kind of an introduction to that idea. It's really goes much deeper. There are many other layers, many other examples that I could come up with, but the key thing to get here is that whenever you're doing a spiritual practice for the attainment of some goal, or with the thought of something being an illusion, you're that practice and that thought might lead you to, and they inevitably do if practiced well and regularly enough, they will lead to non-dual experiences. But once you've had that experience many times and you realize what it really is, that's when you see that everything is truth. Everything is absolute truth. Absolute truth is everything. And the thought of, the ego being lesser than, any other thing, or thought being lesser than direct experience. There are levels at which it's useful to think about these things in that way, but at the deepest level, if you really want to call yourself a non-dualist, and actually be that, you need to realize that absolutely everything that could ever be, has ever been, or is right now is there's no real distinction there. All of it is created through basically the opposite of non-duality, which is typically, where the ego comes in, and that's where all of these intellectual stories about what you are and where you live and all of that all gets you away from realizing this. But when you truly realize it, you realize that all of those things that kept you away from awakening um, were just as true as anything that you would experience when you awaken. You know, the deepest depression of, you know, the most vile human being of all history um, is just as much absolute truth as the Buddha's awakening. You know, when he sat under the tree. But, you know, that's just from my experience. Don't don't you know, don't take this as an ideology. Do spiritual practice for yourself. Think about it, and maybe you'll come to see the same thing. Anyway, that's all for this video. Thanks for watching.